Hello, everyone. This is Bob Lowe, CSIA Executive Director. Thank you for attending the June CSIA webinar. Today's webinar will provide you with a business case for system integrators in regard to Windows XP no longer being supported. Be sure to ask questions in the Q&A box, not the chat box, and questions will be answered during the webinar, so be sure to ask them. And the webinar will be archived for later viewing, and the slides will be available also. The host and sponsor of our monthly webinars is Software Toolbox, a CSIA partner member. Software Toolbox helps system integrators lower their risk on projects that involve software by providing them a unique mix of off-the-shelf software products and rapid response technical support that minimizes the need for custom code and lowers field startup time risk. I would like to introduce today's webinar presenter, Frank Williams. Frank is an engineer by education with over 30 years of senior management experience in defining and bringing new technologies to the industrial market. During his career, Frank has been a key player in taking industrial computers, HMI software, field bus devices, and industrial wireless from early to mainstream adoption. His most recent positions were CEO of Elpro Technologies and President and CEO of Action Instruments. Frank has published technical articles and given many industrial-related talks on emerging technology, as well as sat on numerous panels and standards groups. He is currently a senior manager responsible for Belden's Global Industrial Cybersecurity Initiative. And Frank will be assisted by Scott Howard. So, without further delay, here are Frank and Scott.
Thank you, Bob. I appreciate it, and good morning, all. Thank you for attending. This is a topical discussion this morning, and I've included Scott Howard, who is part of our commercial engineering team. He will add a fair amount of technical depth to the discussion should we need to go there. Scott has about 15 or 18 years of experience in network architecture, and most recently has spent the last 7 or 8 years in industrial cybersecurity. So he brings a wealth of knowledge both from the network architecture as well as cybersecurity. So the topic today is end of support for Windows XP, and what does that mean? We believe that it presents a unique opportunity to the alert control system engineer. So we'll continue to review this topic. Could I get the next slide, Scott? So a little background. Those of you that perhaps know Belden may know them by cable, but Belden is in transition, and it's headed up by an individual by the name of John Stroop with global operations and current revenue at $2 billion. Next slide, Scott. Specifically, the Industrial IT Solutions Group is the one sponsoring the webinar today, and we provide mission-critical networking systems. So you're probably familiar with the best-in-class brands of Hirschmann, Tofinos, Garrettcom, and probably many of our customers are your customers, or you're familiar with those customers. Key applications are automation, monitoring, control, surveillance, and security. Key takeaways, next slide, Scott. So today, what we'd like to talk about is what is XP end of service mean? What is it? What does it mean? What do I need to know about it? And how will it impact our industry? And where's the unique business opportunity that you might be able to take advantage of? So how do I help my clients understand what the end of support in Windows XP and Windows XP Embedded means to them? Perhaps what options that you can provide is added value as a control system integrator, and how to help them mitigate their risk, protect their operational uptime while they are planning to migrate away, because as we know, Microsoft has been very specific that they have pulled all of the support mechanisms related to this. And then perhaps how Belden might be able to help that for you. So that's the gist of what we would like to accomplish today. Feel free and comfortable to interact with us as we go through this and take either a technical or a business side view. So next slide, Scott. So I'll turn this over to Scott now at this point to give some of the specifics, and Scott, take it away.
Thanks, Frank. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'll present some background on the end of support for Windows XP, talk about what kind of position this places our customers in, what the implications are for them, and then discuss some potential strategies that you can help your customers with to address this issue and help them to move forward. First of all, a little bit of background. So on April 8th of this year, Microsoft finally ended support for the Windows XP operating system. And this had been coming for some time. Microsoft made this date known many years earlier, and in fact, they've extended this date at least once. This time, they're not fooling. They really have ended support for XP as of April 8th of 2014. So this doesn't mean that the XP operating system will stop working, but what it does mean is that Microsoft will no longer release any security updates or fixes that were routinely being made available before the end of support. Microsoft have also stated that antivirus support for XP will soon be withdrawn. And they continued to say that if you use Windows XP now that support has ended, your computer will still work, but it might become more vulnerable to security risks and viruses. With the lack of support for XP, this exposes XP-based systems to growing risks as the number and severity of security exploits increases. So for more than 12 years, Windows XP has been a stable and widely used workhorse. And a testament to that is the fact that even today, analysts are saying that Windows XP is still running on over 20% of personal computers worldwide. And that is in the general computer market. It's difficult to get exact numbers for the industrial market, but we believe that the market share in industrial applications is actually much higher than that. Probably closer to 50% would be a wild guess, but probably pretty close to the truth. The reason is that this was one of the first versions of Windows that was both stable and highly compatible with with applications written for previous versions of Windows. And as a result, it was widely trusted and widely deployed by our customers in their industrial facilities. So even having said this, you may be surprised to learn just how widely used the XP operating system really is. We can look for it in PCs running important production applications on the plant floor, in the control room, and in the engineering offices. And it's also likely to be found on ruggedized industrial PCs running control and DCS programs, and also other device configuration and monitoring applications. Now, one interesting aspect of the XP operating system is that it also shows up in another form, which is called Windows XP Embedded. This is a lightweight version of the operating system that was developed by Microsoft specifically for use in branded OEM devices and systems, such as machine tools, instrumentation, and operator interface terminals. So the tricky part about XP Embedded is that these devices are not computers in the traditional sense of the word. And looking at one of these devices, the user may not even be aware that Windows XP is running inside them, and that they therefore present the same security risk as an XP-based desktop or laptop computer. So another place to look for Windows XP is embedded components that control and monitor many factory automation and process control operations in, for example, power, water, and transportation systems. So one of the major issues with devices that use Windows XP is that there is typically no practical way to upgrade or patch them without actually completely replacing them. So these devices can present a very difficult problem for industrial users. So the key message here is that when we look for XP in our system, we're not just looking for computers. We're actually also looking for these apparently not computers that still also run XP embedded inside. So why is the end of support a big deal anyway? Well, the primary reason is that cybersecurity in our plant systems can have a big impact on plant uptime and also even safety. While there are some intentional cybersecurity attacks on control and SCADA networks, the vast majority of cybersecurity incidents in these networks are accidents. And these accidents result in many millions of dollars in losses each year. Of these accidents, 38% are caused by malware. These are viruses that just happen to find a vulnerable PC somewhere inside the plant network. Now that support has ended for Microsoft Windows XP, plant systems that rely on XP will become much more vulnerable to malware as time goes on. So the end of support for Windows XP places industrial users in a very uncomfortable position. The risk of security issues and resultant downtime will steadily increase over time. However, the cost of upgrading or replacing Windows XP-based systems, and particularly the cost of the associated disruption to operations, is often prohibitive. So what can our customers do about this? Well, let's look at some of the options. Option number one, don't do anything. So the thinking here is that Windows has been reliable for a long time, so why replace it? Well, that reliability was delivered in part because of the ongoing support and updates from Microsoft, which are no longer available, and also by the continued availability of antivirus tools, which we know now will eventually be discontinued. So in the long run, Windows XP will not continue to deliver the reliable results that we have seen to date. Plus, when XP products fail, as all hardware devices eventually do, there will be no ready replacement available without making significant changes. And that adds up to high costs and lost production. So while staying with XP might be an attractive option in the short term, it is definitely not viable in the longer term. Let's look at another option, the option where we upgrade our devices to a new version of Windows. So upgrading is obviously attractive because these newer versions are explicitly supported by Microsoft and by the application vendor. So this gets us back into a situation where we can rely on these partners when we need help. There are some disadvantages, however. Most industrial firms that choose to migrate to a new operating system know that it takes time and planning to make this work. The time frame could be 12 to 24 months for a complete changeout to ensure everything works as it should once it's put back together. This process can involve plant downtime, and without a doubt, the customer will invest money and staff time to accomplish the upgrade. Next, we need to consider something that we call the upgrade domino effect and identify areas where that will present biggest challenges to the organization. So what is this domino effect? Well, simply put, an operating system upgrade will almost always have unexpected impacts that extend to other areas such as the computer hardware, the device driver software, and compatibility with application programs. And then all these changes need to be tested and validated. So something that initially looked like a simple operating system upgrade can end up consuming a lot more time and money than anticipated, with no guarantee of success. So one other issue that is a very serious one when XP Embedded is in use is that these devices may even not be possible to be upgraded. The only way to upgrade many of these products is to simply replace them. So upgrading is a good long-term solution for those computers and applications where upgrades are possible and supported. But it's not a universal solution, and it takes significant time and money to accomplish. As another option, our customers may want to consider deploying industrial firewalls. These devices can be easily configured to block network traffic, which can exploit vulnerabilities in Windows XP-based systems, while still allowing them to perform their primary functions without interruption. Industrial firewalls are simple to install and configure, and because of this, they can be very cost-effective. And the focus here is on the total cost of ownership, including the minimal plant downtime. Many industrial firewalls can be deployed in a fully transparent mode, and so this allows them to create layers of protection for the XP devices without requiring any changes to the existing plant network or to the XP devices themselves. And this is really a key point here. They provide protection without any significant impact on the existing plant systems. They can also be added to the network without any significant disruption to production. And they are really the only practical solution for protecting systems based on Windows XP embedded that cannot be upgraded. So industrial firewalls offer a simple way to protect these vulnerable XP systems, either as a permanent solution or as part of a transitory solution to provide protection while other strategies like upgrades can be deployed. So how do we move forward? How do we actually implement these changes? So we could start by creating an inventory of all the XP-based assets in the client's plant. This will help us to understand the scale and the scope of the problem. And the focus here is that we're looking not only for computers that are based on XP, but also any embedded devices that might have XP lurking under the covers. And this needs to include devices that are sourced from outside machine builders and OEMs. Once we have the raw data on all the XP-based systems, now we can perform a simple analysis to figure out which ones are the most critical. And in the security world, we would call this a security risk analysis. So we want to take a look at each of our XP-based systems and ask ourselves some questions like, which systems are likely to fail first? If I couldn't replace this system, what would the impact be on our plant revenue, our safety, and even on the environment? The goal of this analysis is to identify the most critical systems where a failure would have the most impact on our client. And we can start working on these systems first. And so once we know which XP-based systems are the most critical, now we can develop strategies to help protect the client. And what is the most appropriate choice for each of these systems we've identified? Well, do nothing, that is a choice, but probably not the best one. Do we want to consider upgrading this system, or maybe protect it with an industrial firewall, or perhaps a combination? For example, firewalls could be deployed to obtain immediate protection, and then this provides some buffer time to perform an upgrade to those systems where upgrades are possible, and we can then continue to leave the firewalls in place for non-upgradable devices until such time that they can be replaced. So this gives the user another option where the firewall can provide some flexibility which they wouldn't otherwise have if they have to make a hard choice between staying with existing systems versus the cost and complexity of an upgrade. Frank, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, thanks. So again, just a quick overview here, guys. Hopefully we've given you a good or a better understanding of the impact of what Windows XP, perhaps equally important, the opportunity associated with going into your clients and talking to them about this, and not necessarily driven by a specific project, and perhaps gaining some additional relationships or advancing your relationship with your clients. So how can Belden help that? We've been studying this Windows XP switch out or issue for a little bit, so we have, we believe, a lot of rich content on the subject matter itself. And that includes everything from whatever media you would like to consume it in or your client might be helped by. So videos, white papers, etc. And there's linkages that you can go right to our website and get that. Belden can be your trusted advisor. And just as you can be an advisor and advance your subject matter expertise related to this subject and cybersecurity in general, which is very topical in the industry at the moment. Belden believes that they hold strong domain and subject matter expertise. We can be your background trusted advisor to help assist you and then you assisting your clients. We do offer a number of programs, our Certified Industrial Network program, which members can benefit. And we do have a Try Before You Buy program, which basically eliminates any risk. You don't have to worry about taking any inventory or anything like that. And again, size matters. Belden is a $2 billion company, and we think we can help. Bob, with that, I think we're open for questions, and we can take this topic discussion wherever you'd like, either more from a business and what else we can do to help, or technically deep, or get some clarity on some of the things that we just talked about today.
Okay. I don't have any technical questions, but just, well, maybe one of them, but, and obviously I want our participants to, ask their questions as well. That's the most important thing, but a few things I thought of. How can an embedded XP operating system be identified with these, whether it's an instrument or, whatever? How, if a system integrator suggests to their clients that, they do an inventory of what's in their plants, how can the system integrator identify the operating system within in a dedicated device of some sort?
Scott, you want to try that?
Well, that's a great question, Bob.
That's a great question, yeah.
So, that is an issue. The Windows XP embedded operating system was designed specifically to be buried as a component inside a deeply embedded computer, and you can start by looking for certain categories of devices. So any device that has a graphical user interface on it of some kind, maybe a touch panel, or maybe just a color display of some kind with a push button front panel. Watch, if you get the opportunity to see the device when it first starts up, when you first apply power, sometimes you will see the traditional Windows boot messages go by on the screen. But it is and it can be difficult depending on, how the OEM device was designed and how the OEM, how deeply embedded this operating system is. So, some of the categories of product that we identified earlier are likely candidates for XP. Instrumentation, operator interface terminals are the most popular, but that's a difficult problem, and that's probably an area where integrators can definitely add some value for the customer.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Perhaps even if you have a make and a model, may require some investigative work, and using the internet, just try to determine maybe in a spec sheet or something, you may be able to discover that. So, okay, a question came in. How can the industrial firewall mentioned here prevent problems since it's not known what new security vulnerabilities will be discovered?
So the way we recommend that this be used is to set up the firewall in what's called a whitelist. Mm-hmm. So first, let me explain what that means and so everyone on the line is probably already familiar with what we would call a blacklist technology, because this is the way antivirus typically works. And blacklist means that you're looking for known patterns of data that represent an attack or a malware of some form. And when you recognize that pattern, you block it from causing any harm. But if you don't see a match, then by default you let it through. So whitelist takes the opposite approach. Whitelist says, I'm only going to allow the network traffic that I know should be there. If I don't recognize it, it's not getting through. And this is a very powerful security approach, and especially for control networks, because the number of protocols and connections that are present in a typical control network is small compared to an IT network, And once they're set up, they don't change very often. And so it's relatively easy to identify what types of traffic are needed for the device to do its job. And then that's all we allow to pass through the device, through the firewall. This means that any unexpected network traffic that might actually represent accidental or intentional attack on the device just will not be able to reach the vulnerable device and cause problems. So the devices that Belden sells have a couple of special features that make it easy to find out what network traffic is needed by the XP device and make sure that your rules will let everything pass through that should be there and block anything else that we're not expecting.
Okay. The follow-up by this same gentleman, Mark, was will this mean that constant updates be available to each switch on the network? And if I guess
so that's the beauty of a blacklist approach.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That's that's the beauty of a whitelist approach, because you know what should be there, and that doesn't change very often. So it's not like we need to know what to look for. We just need to know what should pass through, and everything else that's not recognized is just not allowed to pass. And one other nice thing about these firewalls is that we can also configure them to generate alarms when something unexpected shows up. And if we do, that means if we do have a problem, we will find out about it quickly, and we can act before it actually causes harm to the plant.
Okay. Question from Jason. I wouldn't have expected XP embedded systems to be downloading and installing updates anyway, even before the end of support. Are these systems really a bigger risk after end of support than they were before it?
It depends on how they're deployed. It depends on the design of the network to which they're connected, and it depends on the other devices that are present in the plant. So it's hard to say in an absolute fashion what the level of risk is, but I think it's pretty fair to say that the risk will definitely go up after the end of support, and the degree to which it increases depends on the specific application.
Yeah, I would just add as well, there's, Bob, there, just to perhaps add some additional clarity, I hope, and that is that right now as we speak, we know that there are people out there trying to be clever bunnies and show that they can penetrate or breach the Windows XP, and since it's usually every Tuesday, Microsoft would come out with their patches and updates, and that would be normally related to networks. But once, if the unit is not connected to a network at all in any shape or form, it's probably a lower risk for the embedded XP. But most of them are being connected to the network now, and these hackers are now recognizing how to breach the network, and then once they breach the network, that finds its way into the embedded Windows XP.
Mm-hmm. You know, Jason was indicating that if it wasn't set up to be downloading and installing updates anyway, could a vulnerability really even make it into that embedded operating system?
Well, if it's not updating, then it's actually quite vulnerable even to very old forms of malware. So, you know, that's an even greater reason to consider protecting it.
Okay. Very good. Another question. If your control network is not exposed to the internet, could you still be at risk?
Yeah, great question, and a very common question. And what I would do is I would reference people back to the slide that we showed here about the actual types of cybersecurity threats that we see in control networks. And the ratio of accidents to intentional attacks is about 80 to 20%. And this is almost the exact opposite of what we see in IT networks. So the real threats that we're worried about here are accidents, so device and software failure, human error, and malware. And at least 2 out of those 3 threat sources can occur anywhere inside the plant. It's not necessarily going to be originating from the internet. And another very common way that malware finds its way into a control network is through pathways of entry, such as laptops that are carried in and out of the plant, and USB keys that can make their way around to different PC workstations inside the network. So, you know, the idea of being isolated from the internet really doesn't address at least 2 of these 3 threat sources that we need to be concerned about.
We got a couple of questions coming in through chat as well. I have a question here. Are you suggesting that we install a firewall in front of each industrial computer on the network?
We would love it if people did that, but that's not practical from a cost or even from a security point of view. The strategy that we found works best is a strategy that we call defense in depth. And this would involve generally looking for groups of devices that have similar functionality. So we divide our network into security zones, and then we can isolate the zones from each other with these industrial firewalls. And so this provides a good balance between cost and risk. And when I say cost, it's not just the financial cost, but it's engineering time and effort also involved in deploying a system like that.
There's a couple of more questions coming in through chat. Is the firewall a temporary, inexpensive solution to a larger product that eventually need an OS addressing?
That certainly can be one way that we can deploy it. You know, we found that customers who address this problem with Windows XP tend to do so in a couple different ways. There isn't one solution that works well for every application. They have some systems that can be upgraded, and if that's possible, great, do it. Some systems can be upgraded, but they can't be done quick enough, and so this is a place where the firewall could be a temporary solution. Give them a little bit of buffer time to perform the upgrading and the testing that is needed before they actually go live with the upgraded solution. And then there are some systems which just cannot be upgraded, and so the firewall becomes a semi-permanent solution in those cases until such time that they can put an alternate system in place and change out the vulnerable equipment.
Okay, I have a question came in from Andrew. Did Microsoft stop supporting Windows Embedded the same time they stopped supporting XP?
So it turns out that there is actually one version of XP Embedded which will continue to be supported. And this is a special flavor called Embedded 2009. All other versions of Embedded are now off the support program, as similar to the desktop version of XP. There are not many embedded devices in use in industrial applications that are using the supported version of XP Embedded. It's probably out there, but we have large numbers of customers with large numbers of devices that are now using unsupported versions of XP Embedded.
Okay, I have a question for you. If you're a system integrator, what would your approach be to your clients about XP end of service, without sounding like you're, trying to take advantage of them? These are your clients that you've worked with them for some time and they trust you. Mm-hmm. How would you approach it? Because I want our system integrators to know how to have this conversation.
And that's a great question. So generally, if you're in that position with a customer, you have pretty good understanding of the plant systems. And you probably already have a pretty good idea of what the most critical systems are. And as usual, the consultative selling approach is the one that I find works best. It's a partnership. You're the technical expert. Customers rely on you to provide that technical input. And, you know, I would just identify those critical systems and, you know, over lunch say, hey, guys, you know, we've heard about this XP end of support, and I know you're using XP here, here, and here. We might want to look at what the impact might be on your operations due to this end of support. And that approach, you know, I think is a responsible one, and it's probably something that the customer may or may not have considered. So, you know, I mean, we're not trying to promote any sense of you know, taking advantage of a customer. Obviously, this is typically a situation where there's a long-term relationship and the customer values the technical content and knowledge that the integrator can bring them and has brought them. So it's part of that same relationship that's been going on for some time.
Yeah, I think it's a good point.
Bob, I would, Bob, this is Frank. I would add, I mean, I wrote a blog this morning that was posted on the Belden blog that your membership out there can go and read, and I think it addresses this. And what I did was I said, you know, again, you should open the conversation with something like, we know you have Windows XP, we know migrating away from it is a huge job. We can help you navigate more effectively through this migration, secure your systems now and in the future. And I think that's a conversation that is value added, and it helps to open up the dialogue, because I think what we're finding is, in many ways, many clients don't know they have Windows XP. They don't know there's a looming threat there, or they kind of know and they've discounted it. And I think they discount it at their you know, at their own risk. And I think system integrators, control system integrators, can add a lot of value by indicating that as a trusted advisor, they can add a lot of value to help them move from where they are now, because the whole point of it is that they must migrate. They have no choice. They will have to migrate going forward. Now, whether that's today or whether that's 1 year from now, they will have to do it, because Microsoft has abandoned Windows XP, period, full stop. And what they want you to do is go to Windows 7 or Windows 8, which is fine for them. But for our industry, with all the application and use cases that have been applied over the last 12 years, it's going to be a rocky road to get from here to there.
I have a couple of more questions came in. Rick was asking about that firewall before, and he has a follow-up question about HMI here. You still have outside laptops on the network and USB keys that could produce malware access to the HMI. Is there anything that can be done to help these two problems?
So, yeah, we, you know, as part of our normal cybersecurity business, we do work with a lot of customers to help them perform a risk analysis, risk assessment and analysis on their control networks. And I would bring that question back to the same discussion about the concept of creating zones and conduits in the plant network. It's basically impossible for anyone to prevent these kinds of accidents from happening. But with a good zones and conduits design, implementing defense in depth, what we can do is we can stop the problem from spreading to parts of the network where it can actually create downtime, and we can generate alarms in real time that we can put in front of the control engineer through an email or a text message, so that he knows right away when a problem happens. And he also gets the critical information from that alarm message that he needs to find the source of the problem and fix it. So, you know, the goal here is to just stop these issues from creating downtime that can impact our plant production and safety.
Could part of the conversation with the system integrator could have with their client as well as not just devices, but also just plant procedures? For example, this question centered around someone plugging in, a thumb drive into, the USB port and perhaps infecting it. Of course, that's always been a threat. So, could the conversation about XP also go broader in cybersecurity perspective entirely, and that is processes and procedures within a plant, both by employees as well as visitors?
Absolutely. In fact, the best security solutions are multi-layered, and they include things like policies and procedures and training, and not just technology. And these are areas that are important components of a comprehensive security solution. So I don't want to hijack the presentation and turn it into a security presentation necessarily, but these are areas where Belden and partners of ours can help. And I think the XP issue is a very focused and easily understood security issue that there's a fairly good solution that the integrator can take to the customer quickly, and this will over time probably evolve the customer's understanding of the security problem and help them to in turn evolve their organization's policies, procedures, and training to really improve their security posture.
Very good. Are there any more questions, Monica, in the chat?
I think the last one answer, Matt had a question of a system for system integrator for the client who has XP conversion project. Is Belden having that capability? I can't even say the word, I'm sorry. If there's something you can help out with, but I think that was the last, you talked about that last, right?
Yeah, we would always want the integrator to take the lead in terms of a relationship with the customer, but on the back end, Belden and a couple of our members of our partnership ecosystem can provide technology and also consulting and training services to help the integrator and the customer come up to speed on how they can deliver more comprehensive security solutions. If that's of interest, then I would encourage the integrators to get a hold of Frank or myself, and we can start that conversation.
Okay. I got another question here. Or do you want to go ahead, Bob?
Sure. This is from Scott. This came into the chat box. It's more of a statement than it is a question. It's a very good one. Using certain network tools like LAN scanners, you can find the IP of each device on the network and associated operating systems and corresponding MAC addresses. This will allow you to virtually inventory your network.
That is true.
That's true.
And that is, I want to put a caution out there that kind of tool on a control network can be somewhat dangerous because a lot of the PLCs and other embedded devices are actually quite vulnerable and fragile and can be made to crash if they are scanned too aggressively. But used responsibly, that can be a very helpful tool to perform that asset inventory, which really is the first step in the process that we recommend to get a handle on the size and the scope of the issue.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Well, thank you, Scott, for that suggestion.
And we do have another question from Rick here. Do you manufacture a network switch with a firewall built into it that will whitelist filter any traffic through it?
We have a couple products like that, and I don't want to turn this into a product pitch, but yes, we do offer products like that.
Very good. Thank you. Are there any additional questions? We're at the 45-minute point. It's been great discussion. I really appreciate all the questions that are being asked. If there are any additional ones, let's have them come in now. We've had a great turnout here today. Thank you, everyone.
We intentionally wanted to bring, just the points that we did today and really use this as a give and take. So we appreciate also the questions. They are questions that we get routinely, so there's no surprises based on the kind of interaction we've had, and we appreciate that.
Sure. As executive director, one of my roles is organizing our monthly webinars, and I always get nervous about a webinar that could conceivably turn technical, because these are meant to be business level educational webinars, and I impressed upon Frank that this really needed to remain as a business case, and the whole intention here was that our members come to realize that this is a revenue opportunity. And again, you have to tread carefully. You don't want to make that perhaps be too explicit, but this truly is a revenue opportunity and a valuable service that you can provide to your clients, especially your maybe smaller clients, regardless of the industry, because they, like was said earlier, they rely on you to keep their plants, their facilities in operation. And this is a conversation that needs to be had. And, the whole intention of today's webinar was to help you understand this is a business case. It's a revenue opportunity. You just have to handle it well. And many of the points that were made during today's webinar can be part of that discussion over lunch. And that's what we really, really encourage our members to do. And just, make it part of your business development, your client relations, and so forth.
And this is just to appreciate that, Bob, this is a very fluid. The Windows XP unique opportunity, I think, is fluid. That means as we go through this, we're learning more and more. So we think that Belden can add value to your value. So if you keep us in the loop or want to connect with us in a more integrated way, we'd love that as well. Thanks again for your time this morning. We really appreciate it. If you have any more questions, please use frank.williams@belden.com or scott.howard@belden.com, and we'll get right back to you.
Very good. So to all of our attendees, I want to thank you for your participation. And, my hope is that you have several takeaways that, lead to effectively managing your client opportunities regarding, Windows XP end of service. And Frank and Scott, thank you very much for your contribution of time and expertise. It was very insightful, and we wish you the best. And thanks again to John Weber and Monica Anderson of Software Toolbox. They've been hosting and sponsoring our monthly educational business webinars for a few years now, and just do an outstanding job. Be sure to complete the survey for today's webinar. It'll arrive in your inbox very soon. Takes only like 30 seconds to complete, and your feedback helps us to continuously improve. So in closing, here are two important considerations. First of all, the exchange. I think all of you know what that is. It's our new website, and our phrase is get on it. And it's an amazing tool to make the most of, and there are gold, silver, bronze profiles, and it's developed for our clients to help them find integrators, find products, and find answers. So we encourage all of our members to take full advantage of the Industrial Automation Exchange. And secondly, we recently wrapped up our 2014 conference, and one of my responsibilities is content for all of our conferences, so I'm beginning to think about 2015. So if you have any ideas for programs, for whether it be the content or the format, any ideas that you have in mind, my email address is easily found on our website, and just send them my way. And finally, if you have any suggested topics for a future webinar on the business level, that would be, just send it my way as well, and it can be included in the survey comments. And also to let you know, we're working with the partner committee to develop a format for doing technical webinars. There's a lot of requests for that, so we're going to be working on that, developing those in addition to these monthly business level webinars that we do. So with that, I don't think we have any more questions, And I want to say goodbye and thanks once again to everyone. Appreciate it. Bye.